Hello and welcome here again live to the World Crypto Network on the new show, Open Source Everything, where we do talk a lot about the amazing different open source projects that are out there and what they are doing, how they do protect your privacy and your individual sovereignty, and how you can support them. Today, I'm super excited to finally talk to you and bring you a nice interview, hopefully, with the CEO and co-founder of the amazing Purism hardware and software products. We're joined by Todd Weaver. How are you, Todd?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic talking to you. I couldn't imagine, anything else that I want to do right now. Folks on the WCN, you already know about Purism, right? We've talked about it quite a lot. Let me share the screen here. Um, So it is a security-focused laptops for everyone. And that is, of course, your basic tagline. And your product is fundamentally all about open source software and, of course, open source hardware fundamentally. You already have a couple projects out there working, but maybe just to go back in the history, how was this whole thing started, Todd, and why did you start it?
Yeah, sure. So we started in 2014 with a pretty strict business model of advancing the freedoms that we need across hardware, software, and services. And so we knew early on that that we had to increment to the point where we are today. And even there's plans that are according to our original business model from 2014 still works. And so what that was is to create initially laptops. We started with a 15-inch laptop. We did crowdfunding for, raised a little over $400,000 in the initial crowdfund to manufacture. And this is manufacture our Librem 15, which is a 15-inch laptop. And then 2015 was basically R&D year because we wanted to make sure that we adhered to the strictures of the Free Software Foundation because we're advancing this overall digital civil rights movement, which means putting all of the control in the hands of an individual or enterprise. And so we built all of the hardware, which a lot of it was, sourcing certain parts, manufacturing a motherboard that didn't have any chips that required any binaries in the kernel, and then continued to grow. Then we ran a crowdfunding for our Librem 13, which is a 13-inch laptop, and then manufactured that. Now the specs on these are high end, right? We're targeting, these are all aluminum chassis, extremely well built. The screens are, high end. The CPU is Intel i7s. You can have 16 gig of RAM, 2 drives, so you can have a SSD, M2 drive, etc. So we're targeting, they're not cheap plastic. They're very, very high quality laptops. So by targeting a market that was really underserved, which is high quality laptops that run a completely free software stack, happens to be Pure OS, which is our own operating system. But by it being very, very strict and Free Software Foundation endorsed means that it's going to adhere to this protection of digital rights, right? And having it rooted in that means then our beliefs are to not have corporate control. Now, there's an important step in there, is that we incorporated as a social purpose corporation. So what that, and it sounds like a couple buzzwords, but it's actually very, very important, is because the systemic issues that society faces in the digital world come because big tech corporations are C corporations where they must maximize shareholder value. So by Purism forming as a social purpose corporation, we actually don't have to maximize shareholder value as our primary objective. We have to advance social good in society. So that means every decision that we make from a board level, executive level, shareholder level, staff level, supplier level, every bit of conversation that we have is advancing the social good, which is user freedom. So that means we have to release all of our source code under free software licenses, etc. So by doing that, it has allowed us to have a very clear vision of where we're going and what we're doing. So that means the hardware that we're manufacturing, when we're talking to suppliers, it's going to say, because we have done this, which is your binary is currently proprietary. We need the firmware to be released under a free software license. And that allows us to buy leverage because we're purchasing from them, right? This is something that's sort of somewhat foreign in the free software entire movement, is saying, hey, we are advancing and we want to push this leverage into the supply chain with real dollars. So then what we did is we, last year, around August, we ran a campaign to fund our Librem 5 phone. And that's was very, very significant, over $2.5 million raised. And the point of that is the mobile market's a duopoly. It's Android or iOS, and that is undermining everything that I believe in. And so what we need to do is have a phone option that gets us to where individuals can be respected. So the Librem 5 phone is currently on path to qualify for a much coveted Respects Your Freedom certification from Free Software Foundation. The entire operating system is Pure OS, which is an entire GNU-based operating system, which means all other GNU-based operating systems will also run when all of our work gets upstreamed. And we work with GNOME, KDE, right, UBports, a number of other projects to advance our cause. And then we just recently, last week, announced the Librem key. And what the combination, because Purism has a pretty simple business model. We have three things that we focus on. The first thing anybody who's followed us is aware of, it's called the Librem line. That's anything hardware we put out is Librem. So Librem 15, Librem 13, Librem 5, right? Those are basically the number equals the screen size. The Librem key is a USB secure token. We partner with NitroKey to have them make sure that they release any of the changes we've requested. Our changes get pushed upstream. We then worked with Heads to make it where we can actually have, for the very first time in computing, is a cryptographically guaranteed tamper-proof device. And so the power behind the Librem key comes with a Librem laptop that runs core boot and Heads, is then the first bit is measured. And that means that you can freeze your device in a known good state, sign it against the Librem key, and for the first time ever, you can walk away from your computer for any extended period of time, come back, boot it up with the Librem key, and if the light turns green, then you know nothing has been tampered with. It's a cryptographic guarantee. That is a gigantic advancement that we've been able to make because of our strict beliefs in user protection and user freedom and user security. So what that ends up, to round it all out, is the Librem 5 dev kits are shipping in October. And then we're looking at the Librem 5 phone in April. And it's still, even though it's still pre-order, is outpacing our laptop sales, and our laptop sales are great, right? So it's really, the Librem 5 is going to be a remarkable product because it's so easy to understand the value it provides. It doesn't take anybody even a moment to realize, like, I don't want to be part of the Android system. I don't want to be part of the iOS walled garden, vendor lock-in. So it's gaining an awful lot of momentum.
Oh yes, and I don't really think that there's a lot of choice in the market. You can either decide, do I want to have complete wall gardens with Apple, or do I want to have Google? Well, both are horrible for your privacy. Both are companies that really do not care about your individual privacy and freedom, for that matter. Because fundamentally, if you do not have privacy, you are not free. Because you are restricted in all your actions, because you always have to look over your shoulder. Oh no, someone watching. Well, guess what? They're always watching. We're carrying around us with these phones, right? A 100-time always on, super spying mechanism. with cameras, microphone, face ID, touch sensors, and all that crap. Yes, super convenient. Yes, they've brought us a lot of prosperity, but they do have fundamentally taken away lots of our privacy.
Yep. So the important pieces that you're highlighting there is that I'm one who's a gigantic advocate for advancing technology, except advancing technology does not have to come at a cost of digital civil rights being destroyed. And so what happens is big tech, because they have a systemic issue of saying we must maximize shareholder value at all costs. By maximizing shareholder value, then that means that they must make decisions that are going to combine convenience with controlling the individual. That's why I explain that when you have a phone currently, you're actually just renting it, because just like a hotel room, you don't actually control the keys. And laptops, you also, if you're trying to do any type of secure booting, you don't control the keys. It's either Microsoft or Google. In the phone world, same thing. It's either Google controls it, your ISP controls it, Apple controls it, and you don't. And that systemic issue is highlighted in the Apple versus FBI case that everybody completely missed the point, which is that the reason Apple got a warrant is because Apple controls the device and an individual doesn't. And so everybody's renting those phones. So what we need is to restore those rights, we have to solve the systemic issue, which is actually having an organization like Purism advancing the social good that we believe in as our values. So what are the values that we have? And we advance the values we have. Big tech, their value that they're advancing is to maximize shareholder value, which is by definition, going to ruin the digital rights of individuals. So that's, and it can be, initially it was a slow erosion, but it was an erosion nonetheless. And now we have where it's in the phone market. The reason that so many people dislike the phone market is because it's a duopoly of complete control by two gigantic corporations. Whereas on the laptop side, right, because those have been around longer, they have sort of a foundational difference where you can install software that you can control. So that's why that the phone is so exciting, is that our phone is going to be one in which the user can control the entire hardware stack and the entire software stack, and then have complete control. So Purism cannot get a warrant for your phone to unlock anything because we don't control anything. We don't control any of the keys. So therefore, we remove ourselves from the equation of what would be the rights of society.
And this is both, of course, the case in hardware and software. If you do not control the keys, it's not your software, it's not your hardware. If you cannot see the source code, well, it's not your software. And there can be a lot of dangerous stuff hidden within the depths of the source code. And same applies in Bitcoin, right, fellas? You know that your keys, your Bitcoin, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. It's the exact same principle.
It is. It's the exact same principle. The civil liberties aspect of what those principles are carry across everything. It just in the, and seeing that, hey, a central authority that actually controls me ends up controlling my fundamental rights. And this is where in the physical world, we've had centuries of building up our physical rights, and we have rules and regulations and that people can influence. In the digital world, we have barely anything. And big tech combines the convenience and also saying, well, we need to advance technology, and so we must do it this way. And everybody just wholesale believes that, okay, well, that's the only way to advance. The only way I can have a phone is if I give up all my control. The only way I can have a chat application is if I make sure that the central encryption is handled by a gigantic tech company, and it's an application that's proprietary, so I can't actually confirm that my end-to-end encryption isn't being undermined by the big tech company. All of those things come down to control. And then the final piece is convenience. I always talk about those two words, control and convenience. If we give control to the individual, but also advance technology to where it can be convenient, then we win as a society, because then we actually are undermining the big tech stranglehold we have on our digital rights.
Exactly. And, nobody's going to give us these rights. We have them intrinsically, and we need to claim them. We need to assert them.
Mm-hmm.
And this cannot be done through regulation, in my opinion. Although, of course, this can help, but I don't believe that it will do much. I do much further believe that we can reach these goals of self-sovereignty and privacy and anonymity by agorism, by going out and doing shit, getting stuff done.
Yeah.
So what was your experience on actually working in this field and getting it done?
Well, so there's three areas that Purism focuses on. One is there's always regulation. Let's just be clear about that, right? So it's just the rules of the game, right? So currently in the tech world, the rules of the game are saying we must have a free market, and then that free market means, of course, that big tech gets to write their little tiny rules that they want, which is to basically say big tech dominates, and we have to combine all these things where we control everything. So Purism is advancing our saying, well, so digital society needs these foundational pieces, right? And if those become regulation that ends up making sure that we adhere to them, then that's great. If it becomes just activism where we're building awareness, that's great as well. But what we actually are doing is we're taking the market approach to say, let's actually just solve the market problem. Let's put out products that are going to be what we would like to see as a standard and the gold standard of what we'd like to see with regard to respecting individuals. So, and obviously the crypto market understands, because that's something that was easy. Well, parts of it were not easy. Now it is easy to be able to then jump in to say, hey, look, I can actually have control and be my own bank, right? And that means that you're removing the authoritarian control. That doesn't mean that there isn't regulation, because of course there is. It just happens to be cryptographic and math, right? Regulation. And in the physical world, we still need to have, authority that we can rely on to enforce the rules that we have in society. So Purism is taking that, solving on all fronts, right? If regulation's needed, let's make it sure it's regulation that's fair. If advocacy and information and education is needed, let's make sure we're sharing that piece as well. But then also let's solve it on the market side by putting out products that adhere to what we actually believe in and want the values in our digital society to be.
Yes, absolutely. There are different ways of achieving change. One is the political means, that is by infiltrating, so to say, the political system, and then trying to change regulation from within. But here again, you're just fundamentally trying to force others to do what they do not like to do, right? That's politics. And then the other approach is the market, right? It's freedom. Where you go out there and you as an entrepreneur allocate all these resources that you have at your disposal to build a product that is so fundamentally valued by the consumer that he will give you something in return, that he will enter in a free and voluntary exchange and acquire these goods and services. And if what you are doing is worthy, then you as an entrepreneur will make a profit. And then you have already manifested change, right? Because you have satisfied a need of the consumer. So how big do you think is this need for privacy and security?
Well, so gigantic, let's just say. But when we put it in those terms, the issue is that Facebook can actually come out and they have literally said, well, we protect your privacy. So the term actually ends up sadly being watered down because of marketing effort. And we know at Purism, our biggest challenge is going to be the marketing money and lobbying effort of big tech. So what we actually focus on is the security, privacy story, but what's the fundamental values behind that are ethics and digital civil rights. So that means user freedom and talking about those things, because when we talk about those things, then big tech cringes, right? Because they're like, oh, wait, how are we going to water down those words, right? Because that's really hard to water down what values would be that we'd like to see in the digital society. So this movement of digital civil rights is something that we are championing and advancing. And so what that means is that in the big tech world, we're coming at it saying, hey, we have a market solution. However, we want to also build awareness that why is it that people dislike what big tech is offering, and it's value based, right? So maybe they can't specifically state that, oh, I didn't like that Google is actually monitoring my maps location offline, or whatever the daily new exploit of our rights happens to be publicized. That what we can do is, if we boil that down to what the values are and say we're advancing that, then we're actually carrying with this a movement of the people. And so our advancement is because we have product. Our business model is to advance digital society as our social purpose, but by selling product, then we can use the margin to continue to advance our story, which means we're very well funded to be able to influence change in a positive manner. So we continue to grow, which actually what we're doing is, you look at it from a economic standpoint, is that big tech has a ton of money, and what we're doing is we're saying we're gonna fight the battle using the same business model, but we're going to actually have a systemic change, which is, we're a social purpose corporation, which means, yes, we can compete on the corporation side of everything you do, but we're not going to be maximizing shareholder value as our primary goal. We're going to be advancing the values that we like to see in society. And so solving that systemic change in our business model allows us to then continue to grow, right? So that's why we can compete in the phone space. And that's why we can compete by bundling and working with cryptocurrency, right? Partners, right? So be able to, in the Librem 5 phone, having, there's all sorts of amazing things that we can do to actually undermine what big tech is looking to do, of controlling payments with merchants, right? And having it be where our phone can have a crypto wallet. It can have it where it can convert to NFC communication, that we can end up even behind the scenes routing through a payment gateway to convert it to whatever currency you need to make a payment at the merchant, right? By infiltrating into the system with values, we say, oh yeah, it's fine to advance technology, and NFC payments are fine, right, at merchants. I have nothing wrong with that. I think that's awesome. It's super convenient. Let's just do it where we have it's rooted in ethical values, that we can actually use an individual's bank service instead of having to use an institution that clearly undermines the values that we have in society.
Oh yes, and you bring up a really crucial point, and that is, of course, the fundraising for such open source projects. And that is something that many open source projects are struggling with. And the beautiful thing is that with Bitcoin, fundraising becomes much easier. For example, here a friend of us coded the Tallycoin website, which is basically a block explorer that lets you track your fundraising. And of course, fundamentally, it's just Bitcoin, right? I publish here my QR code, my Bitcoin address, and I ask kindly for donations. And actually, 0.2 Bitcoin already came in to eventually fund the Purism laptop and do in-depth reviews of it. So that these types of donations are only one way that you could theoretically do fundraising for any project that you would like. So how specifically did you do the fundraisings, and how could the same approach be utilized for other ventures?
Mm-hmm. So, well, we did not use just a cryptocurrency only approach. So what we did is we actually used crowd supply in our very first campaign and our second campaign. And anybody who's looking at doing anything with regard to hardware or product-based crowdfunding should consider crowd supply. They're actually very, very helpful, especially as starting out. Then we self-hosted the Librem 5. Now, each of those, we accept many forms of payment because we're not just targeting crypto market with our product. And so we do accept crypto. We accept a wide array because we use a gateway that allows us to support a bunch. But then we also accept, credit card, wire transfer, checks, meet me at a coffee shop even. So any of those things allow us to fund. So we ran a crowdfunding campaign and then did the outreach necessary about our message. And then that, because we have such a strict reason why we exist, that is fundamentally value driven, that's why we're having so much attention and momentum behind our growth.
Yes.
So the last piece that relates, because you sort of bring up general fundraising, is that by being a social purpose corporation, then the corporation aspect of that allows me to get like-minded investors. So these are historically been customers of ours who said, hey, we'd like to invest because we believe in what Purism's doing and think it can change the future for the better. And so we've actually been able to also take in traditional investment vehicles, be that convertible note and working towards Series A. And so that approach allows us to have a vehicle that says, hey, we can be structured a similar way. The difference is those shareholders, when they come in, they understand, because of our social purpose status, that they have to be socially responsible investors, right? That we're not going to enslave people in the digital world for maximizing profit. What we are going to do is liberate those people. And if you're on board with that, then you're more than happy to want to invest with us.
Oh yeah, and again, that is the interesting aspect of having a ethical driven and a value driven company. And as I realize it, it is really in every single facet of this Purism venture.
Yes.
So
one of the things you brought up, and it's kind of important to highlight, is that these aren't just things that we can espouse. While I certainly do talk about them, the important piece, as well as in the free software world, is that you can verify it. So because in the United States, in California and Washington and a few other states, they have articles of, when you form a company, we can enshrine in our articles of incorporation, and therefore there's legal backing behind saying those things can't change. The values that are enshrined cannot change from when they're incorporated. So that means that that we have that we solve the systemic problem with C corps, right? And that's not, and this isn't like a theoretical issue, right? There's legal precedent that shows shareholders can sue board of directors, executives, because they weren't maximizing profit. Craigslist is the primary example of when eBay bought Craigslist and then sued Craig that said, hey, you have this value-based kind of cool system. It's but we need to maximize profit. And they won. The judge says, yes, by being a C corp, you have to maximize profit. That's the entire point. And so that we needed to solve the systemic issue, because I can't go out and talk about why this is so important while behind the scenes being a C corp and maximizing profit, because what that means is then the shareholder could say, yeah, let's start spying on people, or let's start controlling keys. By being a social purpose corporation, it's a critical difference, is then we're completely rooted in value-based decisions. So everything we advance is toward that, which means we can't undermine what we're doing. And that's actually an important piece about regulation, right? We can't have complete and utter anarchy with regard to the physical world, because then the checks and balances, all of a sudden I could change my mind. And then because of how technology works, people locked in, and the ability to shift is really, really hard. So solving the systemic issue allows us to actually challenge those things with big tech, and it's working wonderfully.
Great what you bring up, and maybe as a little joke, of course, Google's fundamental ethical slogan is "Don't be evil." So what do you say about that?
Well, they actually removed that recently, which if that's not the most telling thing ever. So this is where marketing campaigns can water down. And so, we already know that Apple's going to come out and say, we use, we protect people and we use end-to-end encryption. We know Facebook's going to say, hey, we respect your privacy. Google has so far avoided the gigantic backlash of what's happening in social media, but it will happen. And so what they will come out with is marketing terms that are going to water down and confuse the market to say, well, yeah, okay, well, they did this bad thing and they've done a ton of other bad things, but maybe, it'll change in the future. The answer is it won't. And the reason it won't is because they have a systemic, corrupt model that allows them, because there is no rules and regulations, that they have created a market and a foundation that allows them to enslave digitally individuals, which is undermining our digital civil rights. So the entire movement has to say that entire model needs to go away. And this is because most of these tech corporations are US based, we need to actually solve the problem by playing the game enough that we can influence change to push the values that we want. Because the big tech corporations are going to all just talk a good game and continue to destroy the digital world that we would like to see that's value-based.
Exactly. And that is why, in my opinion, we quite literally should open source everything, right? We should have a lot of transparency in the software that we run, and the same with computing hardware. I'm not an expert in the hardware side, but I do know that there are several backdoors in everyday chips. So is that a problem or was that a problem for building the Purism and Librem line?
Oh, yeah. So in the game of security, which of course ends up being a game of freedom, continue to dig deeper, right? So this is where we say, well, all of the applications that we run are going to be all free software, right? So the source code is all available, but we are advancing the actual freedom nature of the digital movement, right? So it's not just about having the source code available; it's actually advancing the entire saying this. We need to solve the value issues, right? The control issues. And so that's where you say, well, you could have the source code released, but the source code can include a binary, which is very common on computers, that the kernel will be running a mystery code. It'll be running a binary. And so what we did is we selected chips that run in our motherboard, and then we manufactured the motherboard that does not require any chips that have mystery code. So that's an important distinction, is that by advancing the free software aligned movement, then we are continuing to dig deeper. So we go from applications to operating system to the kernel to the bootloader to now core boot heads, right? Librem key that's completely freed firmware even. So yes, it's a ongoing goal. With the Librem 5 phone, we have complete freedom across the entire hardware stack, and also all of the software. So that way, there's nothing mystery. There's nothing, the deepest you can possibly dig, and we're planning to release the schematics even. So being able to confirm schematics match the hardware, right? That's a remarkable story.
Yeah, that is really great. And so how much of the hardware is actually completely transparent? And can we see like every little wire where it is and what it is doing there?
So because we have multiple products, now I have to answer that per product. So the laptop side, because we use Intel reference design, we have everything. We don't have the schematic released. So we basically have dug all the way down to disabling and removing the management engine, which is an Intel binary, at the lowest level of core boot. So the Intel side, Intel CPU side on the laptop, we are nearly there, but we're facing a very, very tough challenge of working with Intel to try to liberate that last little bit. And we don't have the schematic release because we're using Intel reference design, which is copyrighted, and we have to work towards liberating that. Future versions of our laptop, we'll be able to release the schematics and hopefully dig even deeper. So that's the laptop side. So we are 99.99% there, right? Everything else is in the ideal world. And actually, even we're working with the Free Software Foundation to explain that, hey, we've disabled this last little bit, it doesn't run, and now we're trying to prove that it doesn't modify anything or doesn't run. If we can get there, then we actually would have a completely free laptop side. So that's still under, we have 99.999. So the people who are concerned about the 0.001 nastiness of a potential threat of a disabled, neutralized, removed management engine, that is still something we're working on. The phone side is a different story, because the phone side, we've actually specifically chosen CPU, IMX8M, that allows us to have a completely freed stack. So that's GPU, CPU, VPU, entire hardware, all the chips we use, even the will be run completely free software. So that means that there's no firmware that will be able to be software loaded that is going to be a binary. So that way it's completely free. We're also releasing the schematics. So by releasing the schematics, then that means that you can, because your question was, can you verify every single wire? You can. You'd be able to verify against the schematic to the actual physical device that says, yes, everything aligns. And then again, this is something that, we believe in and is enshrined in our articles of incorporation that we must do. So therefore, there's, everybody who's on board with our team is continuing to push toward that.
Okay, that is really nice, and of course, it's hard to have this perfectly done and have everything open source, because I don't believe that it has been done before. Or are there other products, historically speaking, that have provided the same level of transparency?
Well, you have to sort of look under some pretty old rocks to get to the point where you could potentially say that there's something else out there. When we bring up current technology, there's nothing even remotely close. So nothing on the market today, right? Because it's literally a duopoly, right? And there's some options you can start to say, well, can I run the Android that's de-Googled, type of stuff, which there's a bunch of those types of projects, or which of course just runs on the same hardware and it ends up running a bunch of blobs and it's a mess. So the issue really comes down to there is nothing in the phone market that's even remotely close. What we do see is, and it's pretty simple, is that in the hardware game, it's commoditized down to Qualcomm or MediaTek chip. And it's a little tin can. Most of your phone's a battery, right? It's a little tiny tin can that is the CPU plus the baseband plus the Wi-Fi card all bundled together. And so by definition, it shares the resources, meaning it shares the RAM and shares the bus. So what you get is the ISP has complete access to your phone. Google has complete access to your phone if it's Android. Apple has complete access to your phone if it's iOS based. And so that means that anybody who can infiltrate into either the ISP or the hardware or the software provider has complete access to everything on your device. So in the question of, can I break into the encryption in your wallet, in your crypto wallet? The answer is 100%. The way, you just go a level lower. And you go a level lower, you can see everything above it. So in our device, we separate the baseband, which is how you connect up to the cellular network, right? Baseband. We have a separate Wi-Fi Bluetooth module. We actually have hardware kill switches that can sever those, so you can actually turn them off. So that means that this baseband provider's like, that just went dark, and you can continue to stay dark. You can go on Wi-Fi networks. So by separating out the CPU from the baseband from the Wi-Fi allows us to actually individually control these, which means that the user and the person having the device can individually control them. So that puts the control and the keys entirely in the hands of the individual, which means then we have solved the systemic problem, and everything else that can grow from it is rooted in the values that society should have. So that means that on the top level, when you decide to put a crypto wallet software on a device, that you can be ensured that you're the one who controls the entire rest of the stack. So the crypto market gets it right, gets the issue very, very clearly. And the same issue that they get in the crypto world applies to hardware. It applies to software, and it applies to services that are used. And that is an extremely powerful story to be able to try and solve on all fronts.
Oh yes, absolutely. That's great, and every little step helps. So in the chat, Tech World asks, what about the Spectre and Meltdown bug?
So those are, well, okay, you bring up both. So Intel has clearly has a problem, as well as even AMD. And so those are issues that on the Intel side that are going to, the current CPUs are going to still require microcode updates. That's the way to fix that until silicon changes, right? And so it's a problem, because it's getting back to a systemic issue of saying that the way in which silicon was designed to advance, which is a common thing to say, how can we advance the speed? And it has this issue. But because the user can control it and can isolate, then we at least can advance that. And then we at Purism can release the microcode, because we control the entire software stack for users on users' behalf. So that means that we can release a new core boot BIOS running heads, that includes a microcode update that can remove the latest exploit. Those exploits are just going to continue until new silicon rolls out. So that's a known hardware bug that has to be addressed. On the phone side, it's a little bit of a different story. Now it is our IMX8 is ARM based. Our current understanding of that is that it is not susceptible to those issues because it's a newer silicon, but we have to evaluate a little bit more of those. The issue in the end is what we're driving for is more something along the lines of RISC-V, and that would actually be a completely liberated CPU. And if we can get to that point, then these issues, if we had a Spectre meltdown issue, would have still been a silicon issue. So silicon issues have to be addressed in a different manner. It's hardware, right? You can't just all of a sudden release something. Now, in the case of, you can update the software to address the current issue, but the actual systemic problem is still there until new hardware comes out. But trying to dig deeper and say, how can we get to the point of a CPU that is under the control of society? Is RISC-V is the current front runner there.
Okay, very, very nice. And again, always it's tough to have a setup that is completely secure against any malware, any bugs, any backdoors. But at least we are fighting towards that goal.
Yeah, right. And it's also, because I'm, I will never be able to say that something is completely hack-proof because it's just because you can't. But what we can say is that by understanding that we're talking about math percentages, right? So on our devices gets you as close to 100% as possible today, and we continue to push it. So when you are supporting what we're doing and backing what we're doing, that the next thing we're coming out with is going to be an improvement towards digital rights. On the flip side of that, Qualcomm, you don't know that. MediaTek, you don't know that. Google's, hardware-based, when you're talking about Android on the software side, or, Chromebooks, Apple, clearly not going to happen. So what you're doing is by funding those giants that are undermining your rights, you are advancing an unethical society, and that's what we're here to solve. So while we can't get to 100%, we strive for it every day, and that advancement, comparing us to if we're 99.999% there, you look back on the stack that Google or Apple have in the phone, it's near zero because they don't release any of the software, so you can't verify anything. They don't release any of the schematics, you can't verify anything. They don't release any, they're just blobbed up in binaries. They're attaching the CPU to the baseband, so it's a nightmare from actually protecting the digital rights of humanity.
Exactly. And, don't trust, verify, right? That's the thing. That's why we need open source. And
yeah, that's correct. And so you're hitting on such a great point, because if you can't verify, then what you're doing is you're blindly saying, oh yeah, I mean, I guess we believe them. Why? Oh, because their marketing told me that they protect me. So I guess so. And that's a very, very easy thing for society to just sort of like accept, because they're like, well, it's a cool, shiny thing. And so gets back to this convenience and control. In the control world, you have to be able to verify. Now, you as an individual, not every individual needs to verify it, but having it where it can be released so then third parties can verify it. But then the other piece that's really awesome is that we in the free software world can actually do reproducible builds. Proprietary world can never do that. And so we can actually advance where I can do a complete build and say, here's my checksums. You can do a build independent of mine and do the checksums. And we say, do these match? And if they match, then we know we have clean builds that then we can sign and say, yep, man, I've verified this is completely clean. And then we can release the clean verified build. That's something that only the free software world can do. Then the other thing that's awesome is that by understanding that I care about the convenience, right? So I'm never going to go to somebody and say, well, just don't use that. What we're going to say is, well, actually, here's an alternative that's super convenient. And that's why what's Purism is all about, is advancing digital society in a convenient manner. So, and that can take any form. And by doing that, then we can actually solve this on a market perspective, right? Saying, hey, just go use that product. And then and then what they realize is, oh, that product aligns with, oh yeah, look at that. They're solving all these issues that I have with digital, in the digital world. And that's a very powerful story. And so Purism overall, right? We do hardware, we do software, and we're actually going to be adding services to undermine and attack the big tech service world. So this is like, if you think about comparatively, would be Google that has on their Chromebook, Chrome OS, G services, Gmail, G Drive, etc. And then you have Apple with their iPhone, iOS, and I services, iCloud, FaceTime, etc. That what we're doing is we are attacking that all across those same things. So we have the Librem line, which is our hardware, Pure OS, which is our software, operating system and software. And then we're going to be launching very soon something called Liberty. Liberty is going to be a suite of services. The important distinction is all of them are going to be rooted in decentralized protocols. So that means that we can centralize a brand to say, hey, just go sign up for Liberty, but you can also host your own. So like as an example, where you will utilize Matrix as a backend protocol. We'll utilize, obviously email's already there, and then Nextcloud, cloud storage, and so we can combine all these onto a single bundle. And what that does is that rolls it all up into a really convenient bundle that then you can mention to, someone else, a friend of yours, and they're like, actually, just buy a Librem phone and get a free Liberty account, or you can pay for the pro version if you want to have a bunch of storage, right? And then that allows you to have a complete control story, which means it's really convenient, which means we're actually attacking it and fighting on the front that we are facing.
Oh yes, and one important aspect of running a software that is what it actually is by compiling it from source, right? By going to GitHub, by making the downloading it and then compiling it and everything. Which, by the way, you kind of have to do it on your Bitcoin full node if you should run one, right? And also other software projects that you can do that. So number one, is this necessary in Purism, and how easy is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so Debian really advanced the cause of reproducible builds. So this isn't just you download the source and compile it yourself, because even then, this is always, it gets to, you can always dig deeper, right? And so in this case, it's saying, yeah, okay, but do you trust that the source is not doing something malicious? And so in this case, what we say is, well, yep, the source can be verified. But when you compile it, did your compiled binary, does it have any issue? And so what we can say here is by doing reproducible builds, what that means is then Debian can compile theirs, Purism can compile our PureOS side. Someone else can download PureOS's code, we can work with Free Software Foundation because our PureOS is endorsed. So we can work with them to say, you guys build it on, on your system. And then what we can do is just simply compare the checksums of every single binary to say that nothing has been tampered with. The proprietary world can never do that. And so that is something of taking it, putting the power in the hands of the people to say, let's, confirm all of this. And so then it's not just about downloading the source. It actually turns into this, because of the way the free software works, that others can build it and we can verify. So it doesn't even have to be looking at the code verify, this is why it's so awesome. Is this can be taking the advancement of, the speed of computers to say, let's compile all these and verify, and we can, verify these across a number of things. Now that took an awful lot of effort to make it where code can be reproducible, because as you can imagine, if a code in the, has it where it says, hey, let's compile it and insert a timestamp, that code would be different. So code has had to be modified to be able to get to reproducible, but PureOS is on a path to get to 100% reproducible builds because we use 100% free software where all the source code's available. By getting to that 100%, then, and that's we're driving for that, then we solve that issue. And we solve it in a way that's meaningful for you, who's not going to want to go, compile every single thing and compare, every line by line, especially if you can't compare it to somebody else. So here we say we make it very, very easy to confirm and verify that that your code is actually operating in your best interest.
Oh, that is amazing, because that is something really that I was struggling a bit with, is compiling all this stuff from source, because it can be quite tedious sometimes. We have an amazing question by Larry Z in the chat. Why PureOS, which is a Debian derived, over vanilla Debian? Any Debian derivative quickly gets outdated, and you often need to go Franken Debian.
Franken, that's funny. So that's a great question, which happens to also be rooted in values. So currently, plain Debian can't get Free Software Foundation endorsement. And so what we did is we said, well, let's actually create a Free Software Foundation endorsed Debian, which isn't just maintaining a couple packages, right? All of our PureOS developers are developers. So we actually upstream everything. So what we're called is, because the question, clearly somebody understands Debian, we're actually called a Debian blend. So that means we actually do download all the source, compile all the source, maintain an entire distribution that's Free Software Foundation endorsed, and we strip out everything that is freedom, any freedom respecting issue that could come up, such as recommending to install a binary. We don't want to do that, because if we make it really convenient, you've all of a sudden tainted your system. So we take a very, very strict approach of saying we will never run nor install anything that can taint your system and cause you harm. And so what we do is we try to push those policies upstream to Debian. But when you're referring to the sort of quickly becomes outdated aspect, that is usually resource driven. And Purism's growing, so we're actually filling more and more of these roles. And so by growing, we actually can be, turn PureOS into a giant distribution that can be a contender. We're already supporting it on enterprise and have a ton of installs, and we have a bunch of developers that are actively on it every single day, getting paid to do that work. So it's so the difference, I think, in the comparison is most of the Debian derivatives, with the exception of Ubuntu, are ones that it's sort of a pet project. In our case, it's no pet project. It's a pillar, right? We have 3 pillars in our product line: Librem hardware, PureOS software, and the applications that run on it. PureOS is also going to be running on our phone. It's the same exact operating system. We compile for ARM versus x86, but the same code base. And then we have the Liberty services. All of those are advancing with real money, real developers getting paid. So it isn't it never is a Franken-Debian. It is, nor is it anything that is, decreasing in interest or contributors. It's an ever-growing number.
That is perfect. And again, all the way up and down the stack, open source everything, right? That's how it should be, and do it privacy focused and based on fundamental ethics and beliefs. That is fantastic. Yes. So then maybe another question, because there's always the risk that governments come and knock on your door and be like, hey, well, all nice, your ethical based thing, but I'm just like, here's a gun, we put it to your head. We need the back door. What is your plan on doing that, and how likely do you think is it?
Well, the good news is that by enshrining our articles of incorporation, we actually have the government on our side. So that's the first thing. And it's sort of like, playing the game, right? It's saying, well, let's actually use the rules that are established. Let's play the game within the rules, except what I'm going to do is I'm going to, change the market outcome. The other side of it is that even if we were to be asked to put a backdoor in, then that would be obvious because our source code is released or our schematics are released and the schematics don't match the hardware. So from a backdoor standpoint, it can be a hardware backdoor, it can be a software backdoor, it can be a services-based backdoor. And what we have is we have a warrant canary that allows you to confirm that we didn't get some secret thing, right, that we release every quarter. And so that's very helpful from just a confirmation that we are doing what we're saying we're doing. The other piece is by releasing everything, then it would take an awful lot of effort to try to hide something from those who are validating it. Now, some of the less supported projects can end up having a software backdoor that slips through, but by doing reproducible builds, releasing all the source code, that would be seen as more of a bug that can be fixed as opposed to something that could be permanent. So again, we can't say that we don't check every single line of code from upstream, but we compile it and do reproducible builds, and those developers behind it, by it being source code, have the ability to verify. So we have this, solving sort of the systemic issue of there's no way to get a backdoor in because it would be found out. And then we go through the process of relying on some community, some us, some third parties that can confirm and verify that, yep, that's true, right? There's no backdoors in a untainted Linux kernel. As soon as you load a firmware blob, it's all bets are off, which is why PureOS is so strict. And so somebody who says, who has that argument of saying, can you get a government mandated backdoor? I will only really almost listen to them if they are running a completely pured stack and we can actually get down to that systemic issue. Because if you're loading a kernel binary to run your Wi-Fi, then your argument is only philosophical and you actually don't care about the issue. So it is, so we have solved the fundamental problems of those things. And the other aspect that's very important to note, if in your analogy, some nefarious group comes and asks for us to do something bad for users, what's great is we have to say, well, what are you asking for? Because we have no control. We have no control over your device. I can't unlock your phone, for example, right? Purism has no control. We will never get a warrant to unlock your phone. The reason is because we have no control over it. So when you have complete control, you get the warrant, right? Which is awesome, right? So we can actually, again, playing the game, right? We play the game according to the rules that are set forth now. And then we actually solve this on a market standpoint to bring a product that actually gets us back to what we need as users' rights.
Oh yes, absolutely, and that is really nice. Let me just pull something up because there was just a couple of days ago. There was the Baltic Honey Badger Conference, which was an amazing conference, of course, heavily Bitcoin focused and privacy focused. And they had, upon others, a talk by Jameson Lopp, who is, of course, a cypherpunk, and he truly believes in this vision. And he was talking about the importance of having OPSEC and being secure in your everyday activity. And I don't know if you've seen it, but he is a huge supporter of Purism, and he already has the Librem 15 and is waiting for his Librem 5. So that is absolutely amazing. Could you maybe go a bit more into how you can use this in OPSEC?
Oh, wow. Well, so we do have a lot of supporters in OPSEC, and the reason it all comes to a systemic issue, which is that they can control the device. So there's, I'm sure at this talk that I don't recall the individual's name, but I think it actually sounds familiar. So at those talks, OPSEC individuals, security focused people can go through all sorts of use cases, right? Such as with the Librem 15 and Librem key, you can, for the first time ever, say, I'm going to go, I sign my device in the US, I'm going to go travel overseas. And when I get to I'm going to put the key in my pocket and my laptop in my check-on bag. And as long as I always have the Librem on your person, you know that it hasn't been tampered with, whereas your device can go through the X-ray or get checked luggage, or if you leave it ever, then you have just a question mark in your mind. Where you're like, well, I left that in my hotel room, or I left my bag, and it's just, so having your laptop always on you is a very, very difficult thing. And so by being able to then get to your destination and plug in your Librem key, and it's really super simple because it blinks green, cryptographically untampered. That, from an OPSEC standpoint, then just spills over to everything else, right? And the Librem key is going to be supported on the Librem 5 as well, which is really powerful, because then you can, for the first time, actually say, yes, okay, my laptop's good. Yep, my phone's good. And so so because that spills over into every area of OPSEC, then whatever use case you throw at it, it will solve. And that's why, on the OPSEC side, it's just an awesome story. And again, it's rooted in these values. So we end up advancing these values that it has this, mushrooming effect to touch on everything else. So doing proper OPSEC, you can't do if you're running anything proprietary, right? Because it's, you've only gotten, you just sort of scratch the surface and you're like, oh, well, I'm compromised, and then you're like, wait, but I'm going to run like, Debian on my, Dell or Lenovo and you're like, and you scratch the surface 1, 2 levels, and you're like, oh, now I'm compromised. So it is a game of depth in OPSEC. And so by us taking it all the way down to the schematic level on our phone, supporting anti-interdiction, so we can actually, with the Librem key, we can generate a key on the Librem key. So we never have the keys, which is also a really powerful story. Generate a key on the Librem key, sign a device that we're shipping, ship you the Librem key, then ship you your Librem laptop. And then when you get it, you can plug it in. Is it green? Hasn't been tampered with even in shipment, right? So as you can imagine, it's solving OPSEC stories all over the place, which is just amazing.
Wow, this is breathtaking. This is really, really nice. I love that. Maybe let me just share with you the first couple minutes of Jameson's lab talk. I hope you guys can hear that, because it really, in my opinion, it has cypherpunk manifesto quality. Just his opening statements. Can you hear that?
I cannot hear it.
Oh shit! Can you in the audience hear it? I hope so.
Oh yes, Atlop. Yeah. So I am familiar. I believe he knows Kyle Rankin, our chief security officer. And no, I cannot hear it.
Oh well, seems like there's no sound. Well, I put the link in the chat, so really check it out. It is a amazing speech, and his entire speech was really nice. And he talked a lot about how to keep OPSEC while still retaining usability and the convenience of being public.
Yeah. So this is something that, so in the OPSEC world, it has historically been around giving up convenience. And this also goes, it's not just OPSEC. This actually goes for our values, digital civil rights, all of it is then, so like me individually, I'm more than happy to give up convenience to retain my rights. But I know that's not successful in the big picture because big tech is just going to just dominate and enslave digital society, because not enough people are going to say, well, geez, man, to participate in digital society, I got to do X, Y, all these hoops. I just want to chat with somebody, right? Or I just want to, get online, right? I just want to live my life. But the issue is that the big tech is undermining the values that you have in digital society, and people are saying, well, it's convenient. And I say, I hear you. What I'm doing is making the products really convenient. So on the OPSEC side, by making it where we solve the systemic issue by making products convenient, then the OPSEC also inherently becomes convenient, because then you can say, wow, look at this. I mean, how much more convenient are you going to get when we ship you a Librem 5 and I can pre-sign it with a key that is generated, so I don't have it, and I can ship you a Librem key and a phone, and then you can just plug it in and see a green light, which means it's in a pristine, cryptographically signed, untampered state. And you're like, wow, well, that was easy, right? And that's very, very strong OPSEC. But that's also just convenient for an average person. Then that same key can also encrypt your emails. So you can unplug it, put it in your pocket. Most jeans have a little Librem key pocket. They planned, decades ago, centuries ago. So you put your key, the Librem key, in your pocket, and then you can use your phone. And then when you want to verify or sign an email, or is you can plug it in, and your email can be signed and sent. That's extremely convenient. So by addressing the convenience, we can actually not just make it as convenient, actually even make things more convenient. And the reason we can make things more convenient than the proprietary right stripping alternatives of big tech is because we can utilize decentralization. Then that means that users are in control. They can move from one provider to another provider, right? And we can use a single account, right? I could call your account, I could email your account, I could, follow you on ActivityPub based, social media. And so it becomes a very, very convenient system. And by advancing that convenience as a product story, it turns into a really compelling shift that we can actually make in digital society.
Oh, yes, precisely. So a quick question, because we have amazing open source hardware and software like here, the Cold Card wallet, which is a Bitcoin hardware wallet, and could the Librem key also be used to manage your Bitcoin private keys and organize and sign these transactions?
The Librem key is not a crypto wallet, but the Librem 5 phone can be. And so the combination of those two allows you to have your Librem 5 as a crypto wallet. That what's great is you can still welcomely carry it around with you, because you can use your Librem key to confirm that it hasn't been tampered with. And so, so the Librem 5 is one in which is not just a smartphone, but also can be a crypto wallet plus a smartphone, or it could just be a crypto wallet if you want to. And you can do whatever you need because it's a fully powered computer. The Librem key is the cryptographic token to say nothing's been tampered with against that. And so, no, the Librem key cannot become your USB token or USB wallet. It's a GPG, OpenGPG smart card.
Okay, yeah, well, but already using PGP encryption in a more convenient way is already a lot, right? This is something that is really valuable, and of course, having a second physical factor of authentication should be used on pretty much all the websites, right?
Yeah. So this is where it's the what you have, right? And so you have the Librem key, and then you have your Librem 5 phone or the Librem device, and by the combination of those two, which actually means that the device is authenticating to you, which is completely flipped from everything that you're familiar with, right? Which is, I have to authenticate to my computer. It's actually no, the computer's actually going to be authenticating to you to say, yep, I'm still in the known good state that you had before. Let's and begin using me, right? And so the same can go with your crypto wallet, right? Is that right now you'll have a question of, well, did my crypto wallet get compromised? Did I, what's happened? There can always be a question. But this will be for the first time to say it's a frozen known good state. My money's locked away in my bank. It's this little portable bank, but it's my bank. And then you can plug in your Librem key to verify, yep, everything's still good. Whew, right? And rest easy. And so that convenience is very powerful story.
Okay. Oh, yes, absolutely. And one question I would have here for your Librem line, right here it is on products, is right here. It says TPM for early adopters. So I do hope we still call this early adopters. What is TPM though?
Oh, it's a trusted platform module. So on our devices, and actually, I think the for early adopters now gets to be removed because we have our Librem key. So originally, we added the TPM, which allows, it's a separate little chip, hardware chip that we sort of, well, the free software world originally was sort of like seen as like, hey, this is going to be this bad thing. But turns out that you can actually root the TPM and use it for good. So by including a TPM, that means that we can actually measure the rest of the system and load it into the TPM. And the TPM has all sorts of wonderful tamper-evident approaches where it can only increment in one direction. If you open it up, it's going to lock the TPM. So it's a very sound security story. And so what we actually do with the combination of the Librem key heads, which allows you to cryptographically sign your system, or in our case, initially right now, our boot partition, onto the TPM. So then you can verify the TPM hardware against the Librem key signed keys, which means that the keys don't exist anywhere on the hard drives, right? Or solid state drives. They exist on the Librem key. And so it verifies the TPM, trusted platform module, against that Librem key to say, yep, they match. Let's turn the light green. And if they don't match, let's blink red continuously so that something has gone wrong, or or it's been tampered with.
Okay, that is really nice, and I think really the main selling point that you have here with these amazing Librem products, and that absolutely blew me away from the first get-go, are the kill switches. So they are radio kill switches, microphone, and camera kill switches. What do they do?
Yes. Well, they actually sever the circuit for the microphone camera. So if I flip the little switch right here, what would happen is the camera and microphone would be immediately cut. And that's actually, simple technology, because it's the same that you have in your light switch on your house that actually severs the circuit, right? And so everything else is done in software, which means basically saying, please trust me, my software is not malicious. And by having it be, if it's proprietary code, you basically have lost the battle. In the free software world, we at least can say, well, yeah, you can verify that the code is non-malicious. You can also do reproducible builds to verify that it's non-malicious. But wow, we can also provide this awesome peace of mind that says, yep, flip the switch. It then is non-existent hardware to the rest of the system, right? It completely severs a circuit. On our phone, we're going to have hardware kill switches, right? So Librem 5 is going to have a kill switch for baseband. So you can actually walk in and say, yep, see you, no thank you, I don't want to have a carrier any longer. And you can sever the baseband, which actually is going to cut the power to the baseband chip. Same for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, which is sending a disable bit to the Wi-Fi Bluetooth to shut down. And then the camera microphone is also a physical switch that severs the circuit. That allows you to know that those are off, and it's a giant selling point because it clearly shows that we care, right, about these issues, and it's so simple, right? It's like, again, back to convenience. Yeah, exactly. And where people will cover their webcam as a common thing, but they forget that their microphone is still plugged in.
Yeah, right. You can't really cover up a microphone with a post-it. That
Yeah,
doesn't work too well. And
exactly.
I just never understood this. Why there was, either a physical thing that just moves over the camera, right?
Mhm,
That
which is,
would
yeah,
already solve a lot. But then
yeah,
cutting the wires,
yeah,
why not?
yeah,
And you
right,
have to ask yourself, well, if they do not give you this opportunity on any phone, well, why is that?
yeah, yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, and well, I think there's obvious reasons, which is yes, it does add cost, but there's other reasons, which of course is saying, well, no, we're just doing it in software, and that's where it's going to be less expensive. By the way, later on we can undermine individuals because we have all this control. So initially, I don't necessarily say that that it's all like coming from evil, nefarious thought processes. What ends up happening is it's just that it's by having corporations that are rooted in exploiting people, then what's going to happen is just a not too complex of a leap to say, oh wait, this is just controlled by software. Oh wait, we control the software update process. Oh wow, we control the software update process for billions of phones. Oh yeah, we can just let's just all of a sudden flip the cameras on, and there's no way to verify it's happened, no way to control the issue, no way to change the issue. And that's again back to this control. So what can even start out as not nefarious can very easily turn to say, wait, we can actually start to get where you're at, what you're talking about, the facial recognition, because it's going to increase our value of information we have on people, which is a digital enslavement. Then that needs to change. And obviously we're working at every one of those fronts to change those issues.
Yes, and there are alternatives, at least on a software level. For example, there is the Paranoid app, which allows you to, at least on the software side, disable microphone, SMS, and camera. What do you think of these software solutions? Are they actually worth anything?
Well, if they're released under free software where I can verify the code, then yes, they're worth something. If they are yet another proprietary tack on that's just trying to capitalize on what is the now watered down terms of privacy and security, then no, it's not. And so what we need it's a simple litmus test for me. Is it released under a free software license where I can look at the source code? Then I will now go to my next step, right? Which is to say, okay, yep, that's great. That at least now adheres to that standard. And then is it from a reputable source? And then I would consider it. The other piece is the reason I don't use any of those things, of course, is because that's just, it's the application layer that then it's like you're compromised at the next layer down, OS layer. So it is the Band-Aid over the webcam, which is, so it's a good thing. And I commend the people who are advancing those free software tools for that purpose, because it's much needed, right? What we need is a lot of those bridges that bring people from the unethical enslavement of big tech into the ethical world of saying, hey, this is awesome over here, guys. It's a complete party. Let's enjoy ourselves. And so those are really important. But if it is a proprietary application that says it's turning those things off, then what you've done is you've just inserted yet another layer of obfuscation into the mix, and that's not solving anything.
Oh, yes, exactly. And I do believe that it is one step in the right direction, but it's definitely not all the way there. As you said, there are several different attack vectors above and below this
Mm-hmm.
application.
Mm-hmm.
Then, we've already talked about a lot, Todd, and I really appreciate you coming on. That really blew my mind several times all over. So what are some features that you really treasure about the Purism line, and what have we not talked about?
Well, I when I first formed Purism, one of my big goals was to actually getting to the point of a ethical phone, and so seeing that coming to fruition on the behind the scenes, seeing where we're releasing the code within GNOME to advance GNOME applications that are native, and then seeing where we're at with the dev kits and the phone advancement. That is something that is very, very exciting. But the other areas that because we've been growing and expanding and spreading our message allows us to throughout the rest of this year and the early part of next year, continue that building awareness and also simplifying the message so that way we can advance what I call the digital civil rights movement. Something that we're going to be pushing for and advancing very, very hard in the coming years. And really what that's about is the social purpose aspect, right? Is that it's not just about like, hey, tell you about the Librem 5 and why you should buy it, because while that does support our overall cause, the cause that I believe heavily in and am genuinely concerned about is the future of computing from a digital rights perspective. And that is, and that's something that, the more people that we can have understand this from a simple standpoint, then the better.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe one additional question that really interests me is that here for the Librem 13 and Librem 15, they are already in the 7th batch and in the 5th batch, respectively. So what have you changed over these batches?
Each one sort of gets an incremental increase. So every time we bring in a new batch, then what that is that could be so we went through like a CPU bump. Like original Librem 13 was an i5, but then we realized, what, it's actually that we're using the same exact motherboard for the 15-inch. So let's bump that to an i7. Then we looked at going from just confirming 8 gig slots to confirming that our bus can actually support 16 gig at a fast enough speed. And so, those are motherboard changes. And then we, also we're looking at how to improve the longevity of the hinges, improve the longevity of hardware kill switches. And so those are some things that also increase. And then we also, threw out one of the old USB ports and swapped it out for USB Type-C. So, these are just minor increment changes according to, as we're placing additional orders. So as you can imagine, right, we have what we currently have there in, 6 months or so, it will, we'll see another bump. And then sometime, next year, we're going to be able to have a sort of a, next revision across the line. And so that's, we take small incremental approaches across the things that are easy to increment. New motherboard run that can kind of bring up some new current things, switching to Type-C USB on for one of the ports, et cetera. And then we're going to every, probably 3 years, we go through a full design cycle.
That is really, really fantastic. And again, what I absolutely and specifically like is the no bullshit design, right? It is a
Yes.
matte black everything, no corporate logo whatsoever. I love it. It's so slick.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is sort of like, some back to like the systemic issues of where things are at, is that I would like you to opt to promote us. Right. So if you'd like to put a sticker on, but I don't want to force you to be a brand champion for us. And yes, that's going to be a detriment for, if you're at an airport, people are gonna be like, well, that's a cool looking laptop. What is it? It's going to be the people who approach you unless you put a sticker on. But I also don't want to have it become where you're forced, branded, which to me, again, is back to, enslaving society. I don't like any type of thing that can force you into doing something that you don't want to be doing. And so I'm all about freedoms as it relates to everything in the physical world and how that carries over to the digital world. We need to be a champion about. So yes, we do care about that. And actually, even we have a post about the Librem 5. Originally, our campaign page, we had like Librem 5 on the back to show like, hey, this is what it's called and be aware of it. But the actual fabrication of the phone, it's going to be really, really fine on the side. Right. So then you can know that, it's a Librem 5, and you could, of course, point to it if you wanted to highlight it to somebody, but it's not going to be a glowing logo. It's not going to be, where a case has to have a cutout, contractually cut out to show that, yes, that is the logo. Right. That type of stuff is undermining what I believe in as a free society. You should be able to choose to recommend things or choose to wear a brand as opposed to having it be contractually forced on you.
I absolutely love that. That is amazing. And it goes hand in hand with everything we've talked about today. Uh,
Yes.
Todd, you really blew me the fuck away.
Well,
I was in love with Purism before we
yeah,
had this chat.
yeah,
Well, what do you call this now?
yeah.
It's like a marriage? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the thing. It's really remarkable for me because it's actually pretty simple when you're advancing value based products or value based solutions, because then we can agree on the values, right? So it becomes really simple. Is right. Let's agree on what a digital society should look like on the values, and we agree that freedom is really, really, really important. It's actually the systemic issue for anything security related. You have to have freedom. Anything privacy related, you have to have freedom. And then let's talk about having it where we love decentralization, right? But decentralization is actually really terrible from a brand awareness, right? So let's actually solve that. That's what we're actually going to be doing with Liberty. We're solving that by saying, let's centralize on a brand but the brand is rooted in ethics that you can switch. So the ability to switch providers, right, is actually really powerful. It also happens to undermine all big tech, which is another reason I really love it. But then we look at the sane digital retention policies, right? So Purism's leading by example of having a policy around data retention, which is we hold the data that's needed to provide a service only as long as it's needed to provide the service, then we delete it. So when you order a laptop from us, yes, we have to have your address to ship it to. We don't need your address once it's confirmed that it's been shipped there. Because if you're going to file an RMA to, like if there's an issue with it, a warranty, you will say, hey, there's a warranty. Here's my email and order number. We confirm those. So we have to hold on to those two bits of information, but I don't need your physical address any longer. Because even if you do issue an RMA, then and need a return, we will ask you for a new address. We're like, yeah, we confirm the email, confirm the number. Because the address changes anyway. So let's get a new one. So having a sane data retention policy is also great. And this applies to in the physical world connected to the digital world. Right now, authorities will drive around in their police vehicles and take pictures of license plates of where your car is, right? So it'll actually record your physical location of the car at a given timestamp permanently. And so this is where, I have tremendous issues with the giant part of that entire story. But let's say that even if I were to accept that, okay, they're just scanning for warrants to say, like, do I have a warrant against this person's parked car? And we go, okay, maybe I'll accept that as a regulation. Now, I'm not personally a fan of that, but if the society says we accept that, then okay, but you don't need it permanently. Right. What you need is, what's the window of time? I don't know, store it 7 days. See, was there a crime committed there? You can go back and check. That's helpful. But we need, sane data retention policies. And so this is another example of what we're, leading by example. And by establishing, really these simple points of, the right to share, right? The right to be forgotten, the right to change providers, then we actually have it where it's like, wow, we've actually created a digital society that I want to live in, and I want other people to live in, and I, want my family to live in, and I want my friends to live in. And so then we actually have changed society for the better, rooted in values. And that's the important thing that we're advancing. So which is why it makes what I do, and every one of our staff members loves what we do every day, because we're, in every decision we're making is for betterment of society, right? It's awesome.
Oh, yes, I agree. When you have these fundamental values, these fundamental, unchanging, and unwavering principles, and then you build on top of that and see
Yep.
where it grows and see where it leads you, that is beautiful. That really is. And that is the philosophy of liberty in general, right? That's the philosophy of open source. That's the philosophy of Bitcoin, for that matter. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So exactly. And that's why the crypto audience, right? In the fabric between all of these things, the crypto audience completely gets the civil liberties aspect of saying, why do I need the authoritarian control of a bank that clearly has a long history of exploiting people, right? We don't need that. But the same thing, the same exact philosophy, value based, carries over to all these other areas. And in the digital world, we don't have a whole lot of champions for what it is that we care about on the hardware side, combined with software and certainly services. And so that's the area that we're saying, you know what, actually, there's millions and millions and millions of people who care about these things, and we can advance with this overall movement. Then we have all of society. I mean, the stats that come in are like 98% of people are concerned about their digital footprint, right? It's a gigantic amount. The issue for them is that they don't have a convenient alternative. So this is where we can actually push to say, hey, we care about digital civil rights. This is what they actually mean. Oh, and we're pushing to say that this is products that can actually solve that problem, right? That is extremely exciting. But the other piece that I love about it all is that the original business model to say, yes, we'll play your game, but we're going to play the game where we're going to push values first, is actually succeeding, which is so exciting. And we'll have additional announcements throughout the rest of this year and into early next year that are going to just confirm all of those statements publicly. And so then we can start to see that, this is it's a much bigger movement than, just something that's fringe, because we're competing head to head with big tech. So it's very, very exciting.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is a fight 100% worth fighting for, because it is something that is not just theoretical, right? It is actual applied change. And that is what we need. We need to be in accordance with our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And actions is what we need in this space. Because if we just sit around philosophizing, well, that's not going to change much. We need heroes, and I truly mean that in the classical sense, like you, Todd, to go out there and jump forward into the crossfires to take a stance for our liberties. And I thank you endlessly for doing that.
Yeah, well, that's certainly nice of you to say. It's something that because I believe in it, so it's not difficult, right? It can be hard work, but it's crystal clear as to how we can get there from my perspective. And so for me, it's basically wake up and continue to execute, right? Which is pushing the supply chain, advancing the software freedom, making sure that we conform and partner with the appropriate people that all align. And so for me, it's no longer the classical if we're going to get there. It is literally when, and it's just building awareness, making sure that the products that we have are high quality, convenient. Because if we can win on the convenient side, then we can actually influence the change of providing it where individuals control their own digital life, and that means then we've changed society for the better. And that's what drives me every day.
Yes, exactly. And that is, as I said, exactly what we need, action. And you are absolutely doing this. So I'm 100% sure that the audience here at the World Crypto Network loves what you're doing.
Excellent.
And now many of us do want to support you. What are ways that we can support you, and how can we make sure that this is a product that will be here in the long run and will become even more prosperous and beautiful?
Well, there's a number of ways. So the one way is, of course, just spreading awareness about the actual issues, right? And then saying that, so by doing that, advancing what we consider to be this overall movement of saying, these are important issues. I care about my digital rights. I'm not going to give them up any longer, right? So, taking a stand, this, number one. Number two is saying, I'm actually going to be hardline about it, right? I'm not going to just go ahead and use this proprietary junk any longer. I'm going to influence change for the better. Those are huge steps forward. The other piece is, of course, building awareness, because for us, if you're talking about Purism specifically, as opposed to this overall movement, yes, if you talk about saying we care about these values. By the way, there's a company over here that's a socially purpose-driven company. They sell product that actually helps us, and by financially helping them, it helps digital society, right? It's aligned with our values. And so, yes, having purchasing products or recommending to purchase products do advance the cause that I'm fighting for every day. But that's not a requirement. It is something that if we can talk about, somebody just says, I'm taking a stand, I'm going to use free software. Awesome, right? And that is going to help tremendously. So there's a number of fronts, right? Activism, which is just taking the stand and saying, you know what, it's this is what I believe in. It's great. And then from the building awareness around what we're doing, if that's something that somebody desires to do or would like to help out, that's awesome as well. And then the other piece, of course, is when you're going to go look to buy another piece of hardware, don't buy hardware that's going to undermine you as a digital citizen, right? You need to support hardware. And if it comes from Purism, awesome. If it comes from somebody else who's doing the same, has the same values, then fantastic, right? Because you're solving the bigger issue.
Absolutely, Piers. If you treasure your freedom, if you treasure your individual sovereignty, you need to claim it. It's not going to just end up in your lap magically. No, we actually need to manifest change. And that is upon others, as Todd says, going out there and supporting these types of projects. And that can be done in many different ways. Even if it's just you telling 1 or 2 friends, well, maybe tell 5, 10, 100 friends, right? Maybe make a video about it. Why not? And if you do want to not only support this movement and provide valuable funding, but also if you want to have this amazing piece of hardware, well, then go out there and buy it. It is available here at Purism/shop, where you can get several of these different projects. Of course, the Librem 11, which would be the artist's canvas, Librem 13, the road warrior, and the Librem 15, the desktop replacement. So I do love these names because I do think they are quite nice, especially like the road warrior.
Yes, right. And we also have, and obviously those are, you're pulling up the laptop device, but there's also the Librem Key and Librem 5 phone, which, in the big scheme of things, right? I mean, the Librem 5 is outpacing, all other products on a 4-to-1 scale. I mean, even today, right? So it's amazing the growth that we're seeing with that. And the laptop sales are large enough anyway. So, but just seeing the momentum behind the phone is gigantic. And then the Librem Key we just came out with, and so as a matter of fact, I think our initial batch that we were planning on, we've exhausted. So we're bringing in the next manufacturing run of those. And so the reason we realize is all the people who previously had Librems that had TPM will want the Librem Key because they can retroactively go install core boot and heads and get all the benefits of a new product. And so it's great to see the excitement around that as well.
Oh, yes, and the excitement is more than justified. So absolutely. And fellas, if you like these kind of videos, and if you like especially the open source everything format, where I try to reach out to as many of these amazing privacy and self-sovereign focused projects, then you can support not just the World Crypto Network in general, but and not just me specifically, but also, for example, here the Purism line itself, because we already have raised 0.2 Bitcoin, which is insane from 13 amazing people or transactions. I don't know how many people are behind that. So thank you very much already for all that support. And we only need 10 million Satoshis until we have the 0.3 Bitcoin. So if you are a Satoshi multimillionaire, well, then, if you have a couple left over, I would thoroughly very much enjoy and thank you for this support so that we can fill up to 0.3 Bitcoin, to fill up the additional 30%, so that you can get even more in-depth videos of how this Purism laptop, especially the Librem 15, actually works and how user-friendly it is, how you can set it up, and all the other types of tutorials and unboxings that all these types of videos usually entail. So again, thank you so much for your support so far. Thank you so much for supporting Purism, which is truly a venture absolutely worth supporting. And also thank you for watching the World Crypto Network in general. That is really nice of you. Thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter at Hillebrand Max. And of course, you can follow Purism for all their latest updates at PURIE_SN. And that is fantastic. So again, Todd, thank you so much for coming on the World Crypto Network, for sharing all these amazing updates. Again, I liked Purism before, now I just am absolutely enthusiastic about it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me on.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and see you guys on the next show. Bye bye.